The Hotel Monteleone is one of New Orleans' most iconic hotels, a luxurious sanctuary that has stood proudly since 1886. But those who visit often leave with more than memories. They leave with chills down their spine, haunted by what they've witnessed within these opulent walls. It was here in the heart of the French Quarter that a young boy named Maurice Berger once checked in with his family. Their stay was meant to be joyful, a much-needed vacation, but joy quickly turned to terror when Maurice fell ill with a fever that no doctor could cure. His mother sat helpless at his bedside as he slipped away, the sound of the bustling city outside fading as her son's breath grew faint. Maurice never left the Monteleone. The 14th floor of the hotel where Maurice's family stayed has become notorious for strange and unexplainable events. Guests often speak of hearing the laughter of a child echoing down the corridor in the dead of night. It starts off distant, barely audible, but then it grows closer, louder, until it seems like the child is right next to them. When they open their door, expecting to find a mischievous guest, they are greeted with nothing but empty hallways. Others have reported something more chilling, a sense of being watched, as if small eyes follow them, unseen, from the shadows. Some claim to have heard soft footsteps pacing behind them, yet no one else is in sight. Maurice's mother, broken by grief, returned to the hotel after her son's death. It is said that she felt him with her during her subsequent stays. His spirit, forever a child, plays tricks on guests to this day. Some wake in the middle of the night to find their belongings moved, chairs pulled away from desks, or suitcases shifted. And then there are the handprints. Faint, delicate imprints of small hands that appear on mirrors, only to vanish moments later. A warning, or a sign that Maurice is still here, trapped in a time when his laughter once filled these halls. One family recounts a particularly unsettling encounter. They had checked into room 1463 late in the evening, the parents unaware of its ghostly reputation. As they settled in for the night, the mother awoke to the sound of soft humming. At first, she thought it was the wind or perhaps a noise from the street below. But then, as her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she saw it. A small figure, standing at the foot of the bed. Its features were blurred by the darkness, but she could see enough to know it was a child. Frozen in fear, she blinked, hoping it was her imagination. But when she opened her eyes, the figure was gone. Only the chill in the air and the faint outline of a hand on the mirror remained as proof that what she had seen wasn't just a nightmare. Guests who visit the Hotel Monteleone leave with the stories of their experiences, but for Maurice, the hotel remains his eternal playground, a place where his spirit roams, unseen but always present. Some have wondered whether it's truly a harmless spirit or whether there's something more sinister lurking beneath the surface of those innocent giggles. The Bourbon Orleans Hotel, standing tall in the French Quarter, has worn many faces throughout its history. A grand ballroom where the elite once danced, a convent, and an orphanage during one of the darkest times in the city's history. But it is the stories of those who died within its walls that have made it infamous among ghost hunters and thrill seekers alike. In the mid-1800s, a deadly yellow fever epidemic swept through New Orleans, killing thousands, including many children. The Bourbon Orleans became a place of sorrow, a temporary orphanage where children were housed as they awaited an uncertain future. Unfortunately, for many, that future never came. The fever claimed the lives of the young, leaving behind empty beds and tear-streaked faces. But the children who perished here did not find rest in death. To this day, guests report hearing the laughter of children in the empty corridors late at night. Sometimes, it's a soft giggle that sounds almost playful, but at other times, it's a louder, more unsettling noise, like children running through the ballroom, only to disappear when anyone looks for them. Their voices, while innocent, carry a deep sense of sorrow. A couple staying at the Bourbon Orleans once awoke to the sound of soft footsteps pacing just outside their door. Thinking it was another guest, the man opened the door to find no one in the hallway. Yet, the footsteps continued, now seemingly coming from right behind him, as if a child were running circles around him, playing some unseen game. One guest reported waking up in the middle of the night to find her covers pulled down, as though something, had gently tugged them away while she slept. When she reached for her phone to light the room, the covers were drawn back over her, as if by an invisible hand. Panicked, she fled the room and spent the rest of the night in the hotel's lobby. The most infamous spirit at the Bourbon Orleans, however, is not one of the children, but a nun. In the late 1800s, the building was also a convent, housing nuns who dedicated their lives to caring for the sick and the orphaned. One of the nuns, it is said, lost her life during the yellow fever epidemic, and now her spirit roams the hotel, unable to leave her duties behind. Guests have often seen the figure of a nun gliding silently through the halls, her habit flowing behind her as if moved by an unseen wind. She never speaks, but those who encounter her describe an overwhelming sense of sadness and despair, a weight that presses down on the room like a heavy fog. One visitor, a woman staying on the 4th floor, recounted an encounter with the spectral nun. She awoke in the early hours of the morning to find the figure standing at the foot of her bed, staring at her with hollow, unblinking eyes. The air in the room grew cold, and as the woman tried to sit up, she found she couldn't move. The nun's gaze held her in place. It wasn't until the figure vanished that the weight lifted and the woman could breathe again. Even today, the Bourbon Orleans Hotel continues to operate, welcoming guests from around the world. Some come for the luxury, while others come in search of the spirits that refuse to leave. But be warned, those who enter the ballroom after dark may find themselves dancing with shadows. The La Pavilion Hotel, built in 1907, is one of New Orleans' most beautiful and lavish establishments. But beneath its luxurious exterior lies a much darker history, a history filled with tragic deaths and restless spirits. Those who have stayed at La Pavilion have often spoken of unsettling phenomena, things that can't be explained by logic or science. Guests report feelings of unease as soon as they step into the hotel, as if the very air is thick with the presence of something unseen. It starts off subtly. Cold spots in warm rooms, the sensation of being watched, a strange static in the air that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. But then, things get stranger. One of the most famous apparitions at La Pavilion is that of a woman known as the Lady in Grey. This spectral figure has been seen wandering the halls of the hotel, her long, flowing gray gown brushing the floor as she glides silently through the corridors. Guests have reported seeing her in the lobby, in the elevator, and even in their rooms. One couple recounted their encounter with the Lady in Grey. They had entered the elevator late at night, returning to their room after a long day of sightseeing. As the doors closed, they noticed a woman standing in the corner, her back to them. She was silent, her figure motionless. They didn't think much of it until the elevator reached their floor and the doors opened. The woman was gone. She hadn't stepped out, and the couple had been watching her the entire time. But the Lady in Grey is not the only spirit said to haunt La Pavilion. There is another, far more malevolent presence, a poltergeist that seems intent on causing chaos. Guests have reported waking up in the middle of the night to find their rooms in disarray, furniture knocked over, belongings strewn across the floor. Some have even experienced violent encounters with the entity, feeling unseen hands grip their throats or push them from their beds. One particularly disturbing incident involved a man who was staying on the 3rd floor. He awoke in the early hours of the morning to the sound of heavy breathing in his ear. At first, he thought it was his imagination, but then he felt it, a cold, bony hand on his chest, pressing down with increasing force. He couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The pressure grew until he thought his ribs would break. Just as suddenly as it began, the force lifted, leaving him gasping for air in the darkness. The only evidence of the encounter was the deep purple bruise left behind on his chest. La Pavilion may be known for its beauty, but its hauntings are anything but pleasant. For those who stay here, it's a gamble. Will you leave with memories of luxury, or with the scars left behind by something far darker? The Andrew Jackson Hotel, nestled in the heart of the French Quarter, is a place where history and tragedy collide. Built on the site of a former boarding school, the hotel carries with it the weight of the past, specifically the weight of a devastating fire that claimed the lives of several young boys. In the late 1700s, the boarding school that stood here caught fire in the middle of the night. The flames spread quickly, trapping the boys inside. Their cries for help echoed through the streets, but by the time help arrived, it was too late. The school had burned to the ground, and the boys who had once laughed and played within its walls were gone. But they did not leave. Guests at the Andrew Jackson Hotel have reported hearing strange noises late at night. Whispers, footsteps, and the distant sound of children laughing. The most unsettling part, these noises often come from rooms that are completely empty. One guest, a woman staying on the second floor, awoke in the middle of the night to the sound of soft laughter coming from the hallway. At first, she thought it was another guest, perhaps children playing a prank. But when she opened her door to check, the hallway was empty. The laughter, however, did not stop. It grew louder, more insistent, as though whatever was making the noise was standing just outside her door. Another guest reported an even more terrifying encounter. He had been staying in room 208 when he woke to find a young boy standing at the foot of his bed. The boy's face was pale, his eyes wide and hollow, staring directly at the man. Frozen in fear, the guest could do nothing but stare back. The boy remained motionless for what felt like an eternity before he simply vanished, leaving the man drenched in cold sweat. Other guests have reported objects moving on their own, chairs sliding across the floor, doors opening and closing without explanation, and personal belongings being rearranged during the night. It's as if the children who perished in the fire are still here, playing their ghostly games with anyone who dares to stay in their old school. The Andrew Jackson Hotel may appear quiet and unassuming from the outside, but inside, it's a different story. The spirits of the children who died here continue to haunt the hotel, their playful laughter masking the tragedy of their untimely deaths. And for those who stay, the line between past and present blurs, leaving them with more questions than answers. So, as you walk through the French Quarter, listen closely to the whispers on the wind. Look carefully at the shadows that flicker in the corners of your vision. Because in this city, you are never truly alone. The spirits of New Orleans are always watching, waiting, and sometimes they follow you home.